Hello there, Mandy here. Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart is not just a podcast. It's also a book, a free online grief group, and a one-on-one private coaching practice. If you are interested in learning more, visit mandykapehart.com to find out how restorative grief can help you heal heart, mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 227, titled A Bright and Borrowed Light with Will Anderson, featuring Courtney Kampa. What does it mean to carry someone's life forward when they are no longer here with us? That is the question at the heart of today's conversation with Will Anderson, musician, collaborator, and the devoted husband of the late poet Courtney Kampa. After Courtney's sudden passing in 2022, Will became the steward of her words and their shared legacy, bringing a collection of her work, A Bright and Borrowed Light, into the world. He also created a companion album, How Little Love Is, How Worth Everything, that echoes their love, their grief, and the creative partnership they shared. So in this conversation, we're exploring how one life can ripple outward through poetry, music, and the quiet, persistent work of remembering, and how love, even in absence, continues to shape the art we leave behind. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I'm here with Will Anderson today as my guest. He is a musician and husband of the late poet Courtney Kampa. After her sudden passing in 2022, Will worked with her closest friends to assemble her final poetry collection, A Bright and Borrowed Light, which is a stunning testament to her voice, clarity, and the beauty that she saw in the world. Will has also released a companion album, How Little Love Is, How Worth Everything. It is stunning, if I do say so myself, and a deeply personal musical reflection on love and loss and her memory. So today we're talking about Courtney's legacy and what creativity looks like and partnership and all the ways we work through grief by being creative and honest. So Will, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me today. This is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start with reading just a little part of your note in the back of this
Yeah, of course.
poetry collection because it makes me so happy. So you wrote, I am generally a cynical person. I don't believe in fate or karma, and especially not the cliched trope where meeting one person changes everything. But in solitary moments, when I'm alone and no one is around to call me out on my hypocrisy, I allow myself one exception to this rule. I can say with full, unflinching certainty that my entire life changed the day I met Courtney Kampa.
It did. 100%. I stand by that statement. Um, she was, let me set the stage a little bit. So I met Courtney when I was 20 years old. She was 19, and she came into college a year late at the University of Virginia. So I was a junior and she was an incoming freshman. And I'd heard from a friend that this girl was coming, like her legend preceded her.
Wow.
And he said, I knew her in high school and she is gorgeous and smart and funny. You will not believe it when you meet her. So one day I was on the quad, I guess you could call it, sort of grassy area. It's surrounded by columns and there's a rotunda at the end, and very collegiate looking. And Courtney ran up to me, and I didn't know who she was at first, but all I knew is there was this stunning girl, this blonde girl. She was wearing a white skirt and a white top and was running towards me. And she just bear hugged me, like tackled me basically. And she's like, Will. And I was like, who are you? Please tell me. And she then told me, she said, my friend Luke is, we know each other through Luke. And I was like, oh my gosh, in my head thinking, Luke, you were 100% right. And we talked for 5 minutes. Didn't really think much of it, but I do remember calling my friend Luke and being like, she is as advertised. And he said to me, he said, I know we're dating. And I was like, oh no, like this is I get why he warned me. But years later, she told me that she and Luke never dated and that it was all a ruse to make sure that I didn't go for Courtney in that moment. But looking back now, there was life before Courtney. and there was life after Courtney. And even though we didn't date right then, we were friends for a very long time until we did, probably 8 years after that. She was one of my best friends, and I got to know her through Luke, and then I got to know her when I would go up to New York, and she was up there for grad school, so we would hang out there, and we talk all the time. And she was easily the smartest and prettiest, but smartest person I knew. So it was fun to get to chat with her because I realized like you kind of turn that side of your brain down a lot. And then with her, you had to crank it up because she was just so whip smart and funny. And it felt like you were a part of this secret club getting to know her. So it
Mm.
really, I stand by what I said in that. There was life before Courtney and life after because Courtney was easily the most dynamic, prettiest, smartest, kindest person I'd ever known. And it really is. I felt like I got so much out of getting to know her for the time that I did and getting to be married to her. Like I felt like I got a lifetime of stories and just wisdom and memories with her that I am very thankful for.
That acknowledgement of a before and after with her being the linchpin, that pivot point in
Yeah.
your life is such a beautiful expression too, because typically that's exactly how people feel after they lose someone.
Yeah. And it is. It's been in my life too. It's like this, she was the shooting star, it felt like. And for me, like there's life after Courtney now. And that's a very different experience for me because I've never experienced that before. I've had um distant relatives pass away or grandparents or people who obviously I was related to, but I'd never had anything like this. And it was, yeah, a very, again, yeah, there's this period of my life that was before Courtney, and it feels like now I'm at the point, obviously, where it's after her, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, learning to integrate that kind of love and intentionality and care and curiosity and creativity is just a whirlwind.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, Joan Didion called it the vortex of grief, which is
Yeah.
exactly what it felt like, especially the first couple years was just like even just trying to get a hold of something was hard.
Yeah, yeah, everything becomes very nebulous and very like distant. I
Yeah,
remember,
yeah. I call it floating. I always tell my
yeah,
therapist I feel like I'm at sea, just sort of like in a
yeah.
little rowboat with I have no idea in the fog, no idea what's going on.
That's a very similar image I used early on in my grief work and in my writing as well. So I love that that was the specific
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
description you just gave.
I feel like it's a feeling that once you kind of say that, people understand what you mean because I feel like everyone's experienced it on some level or another. But yeah, it's a really strange, like you said, whirlwind of just like not really understanding things and not knowing how to get a grasp on reality at that point.
Yeah. So how did it feel then for you to start looking back at some of her poetry, which obviously she'd been writing and collecting and even publishing for such a long time, to start deciding I'm going to look through this and do something more with it than just reflect?
That's a great question. I knew pretty much the day after she passed away. I just had this idea in my head. I was like, I'm gonna put out this poetry. Like we're gonna do this. I didn't know how in that moment or for a long time afterward, but it was just such a part of her life that it felt. I think I was also in that moment looking for something that I could do because you feel so helpless there that was kind of the thing I latched on to. Like, well, at least I can do this. And for the couple months, 3 months after she passed away, I moved back home with my parents for various reasons. And I spent that time, yeah, basically going through her hard drive and trying to find all the poetry on there and cataloging it. And then once we cleaned out our house and we had all the written stuff and all the books that she had written in, then I spent a large amount of time digitizing all that stuff. So it was a lot of her handwritten poetry or little lines that she had thought of or addendums to poems that she had already written. And at first it was just something to do. I felt like it was such a part of her life. It was my way of not letting go of her. And then later on, the book formed and I was sort of bringing other people into the mix, it became this very much a tribute to her because, like I said, poetry was such a part of her life. And not only that, a part of our marriage, living together and both working from home, it just felt like the right thing to do. I don't know how to describe it. Like, it was this feeling deep down that I don't know if I've ever had, where it's just like I know what she would have wanted because we talked about it so much, and I feel like this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I love the legacy that's involved in even just the
Yeah.
process of reading through and collecting the pieces. My husband and I are creative people as well, and musicians and writers, and the idea of fragments or addendums or little pieces that we've recorded, even as you were saying that, I'm thinking, God, there are post-it notes, there are receipts,
Yeah.
there are notebooks, there are half-finished notebooks, there are sheet music, short, torn and stuck in all kinds of places everywhere. That's a daunting project to take on.
It is, but it also felt like it was again, her voice is right there. Like it's somebody who I knew really intimately, and to get a chance to read those poems and read those lines and hear her saying them and understand that was just it was selfishly just a way, also a way for me, like I said, not to get to hold on to her and get to be, close to her still because like we were talking about the vortex of grief, there's no handbook. I was reading books trying to find anything that could possibly, so, podcasts like yours, like anything that would possibly give me any modicum of like a shred of idea of how to like what's the steps. I'm a very like process oriented person. So for me, I was like, what do you do? And it was really hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that there's no right way to do it, that everybody
Yeah.
has their own journey. But this, the poetry part, and like you said, going through it all, as daunting as it was, and as sad as it was sometimes, it was also some of the few moments of joy I can remember in
Mm.
those few months afterward, because it was like just getting to be close to her again and see these things that she thought up and realize you can sort of picture how her brain was working in that moment. And it was just like a nice revisiting of that for me in those times.
Yeah. Was there anything you found or read over that you hadn't heard before, hadn't read and thought, "Ooh, this is something I could
It's,
write from?"
yeah. And it's amazing. Like, there was a poem she had written that I remember seeing once because she asked me about the form of it. Should it look like this, or should I add line breaks and stuff? And just purely visually, I didn't even really read it. I was just like, I like how that looks. And it was a poem she had written about a friend of hers who had passed away, a friend of hers from grad school. And she had written it when we were living in Palo Alto while she was at Stanford doing the Stegner Fellowship, which is like a poetry fellowship.
Mhm.
So it was a poem she had been working on. And I remember coming across it and being like, oh, yeah, I remember this one, and reading it. And it was, I said, like, I'd read so many books and listened to so many podcasts and was trying to find anything that could even describe what I was feeling. And she nailed it in that poem. And it was so weird to like have this person that you're grieving and mourning in that moment be the one to be like, hey, like, I know what you were feeling right now, and to be able to express that in words. So that one sticks out to me as one that I hadn't really paid close attention to, but once I did, it was like it's still my favorite poem out of the book for sure, because I also think it had that attachment to her as like almost like a reassurance from her directly.
What an incredible influence to leave behind, to know that
Oh
you
my
are
gosh.
so intentionally digging that deep well in yourself, that emotional vulnerability, that intentional, that expression. And also that you are setting the stage for others to come along, because poetry is not an easily read medium for people.
Not
It
at
is
all. No.
so quickly resisted. And, if it's not Dr. Seussy,
I
it's
don't I
hard
I
for
don't
people
love
to
I don't
grasp.
really like poetry, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. Like, I was never a fan. There were Courtney was so good. She was a great teacher too. She taught poetry and she taught writing, and she loved connecting people with poems that they would like, and she was always so good at finding poetry that people would enjoy. Once she always said, like, if I can talk with you for 10 minutes, I can find you a poet that you're going to like,
Oh my
like,
gosh.
and she was so good at it. And with me, she introduced me to some of my favorite poets like Steve Scafidi and um Ilya Kaminsky, like just so many ex- uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like, accessible poets, I'd say, is the way to put it. And
Yeah.
I think for her, she took a lot of pride in that with her poetry too, is writing poems like in the way that I related to that one, that people can relate to on a level that's the surface level. And then as you read it more, you get deeper and deeper as you discover more meanings and layers. And that's
Mm.
a rare skill for a poet to have, because most poets I come across are just so opaque and pretentious, and it's hard to do. So I think finding a poem like that for me was just a testament to how good she was at bringing people into the form itself and being accessible to your non-poetry readers.
Yeah, I would agree with you. As I was reading through the whole thing, and I was just, poetry hasn't been on my radar for a while, but I did
Hmm.
appreciate it when I was younger. But it really brought me right back into that
Yeah,
space where I
yeah,
thought,
yeah.
okay, okay,
There's stuff I can get into. And the other thing too is with someone like you or me who doesn't read it that much, there's stuff in there that's takes some time,
yeah,
for sure, in Courtney's book. And we were very intentional about that too, because she's a poet's poet. Like, her poet friends loved her poetry, and other poets were huge fans of hers.
hmm,
And for me, it's amazing how much meaning, even on the ones I didn't necessarily understand at first. Like, there was one a couple, like maybe a month ago, that I've been reading for 2+ years now. And I was talking to her friend, and who's a poetry teacher as well, and she kind of was explaining what it was about, and I was like, it dawned on me and it hit me, and I was just like, oh, and like it floored me. I was like, I gotta call you back. I gotta go think about this. And it was brilliant, but it took me a second, but when it did hit, it was the most satisfying like realization,
yeah.
where I suddenly put all the pieces together and understood the metaphor. And it was, yeah, she was,
Mm.
so there's stuff I think she wanted to push people, and she wanted to bring them in and then be like, okay, like, I'm gonna give you stuff that you can access at the beginning, and then there's gonna be stuff that takes time. And we really tried to make sure that that book reflected that as well.
Well, that was actually my next question is how did you balance preserving Courtney's vision for these works and for even just within the arc of the book itself, alongside making decisions for the book
Yeah,
and deciding what goes in and what doesn't?
that's really hard. Luckily I had two very like great poets, some of my favorite poets, Tatum Bambrick and Catherine Pond, who are amazing poets in their own right, who were helping me put it together. So I basically handed off the poems to them. I said, come up with the collection that you knew Courtney's voice and you knew her very well. As poets, like, what kind of a poetry collection? And I made sure, I was like, make sure it's something that someone like me can read and will appreciate. Don't just pick the ones that are academic or,
Yeah.
too opaque. But with them, then it just became a dialogue of okay, how do we keep this respectful to, like you said, to her legacy and her intentions in writing. Like, I think she had very specific things she wanted to do with her poetry that she and I luckily had talked about. So I had an idea of, she
Mm.
wants to be accessible, but she wants it to be real poetry. This isn't, like you said, Dr. Seuss. It's not sort of like self-help. She really wanted it to be, this is real poems that, you can be proud of reading and understanding. And but the other thing was, it was, there's a lot of stuff in there about, family and friends and people that in real life she would have gotten a chance to talk to about it and present it in the way she wanted to. So we had to be mindful of that too, which is, how do
Yeah.
we balance these amazing poems with also, like, some of them hadn't seen the light of day, and certain people hadn't read them, and we wanted to make sure that we were respectful of that as well. Just sort of like, do we need to change names in this? Do we need to present this to the person before we put it out and get their permission? And luckily, Tatum and Catherine were both really obviously well versed in the process of that and how it should go, and they were able to sort of guide me through the process of that in a way that, there's it's not rules for poetry, but it's just sort of things that are probably best practices that I didn't necessarily understand at first. So
Yeah.
for me, having those two was invaluable. And also for me, I knew what my conversations with Courtney had gone, like how they'd gone. So I had a very specific idea of what she wanted to do, because she was so clear to me about, these are my goals in my poetry career.
Yeah. I think that's amazing that you have that collaborative relationship to be able to draw upon.
It was lucky for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking too, I was listening to the new album and it's stunning
Thank
and
you.
beautiful and made me cry and made me laugh and like made me so happy. I'm going to listen to it a lot going forward. But
Thank you.
I was kind not contrasting, but holding the pieces, the work next to each other, right? The music and the poetry. And it's so obvious that there's moments where you guys have influenced each other and the album speaks to that. But I'm curious, did her precision in her poetry and that expansiveness change the way you approach songwriting over time? Has it
Oh,
influenced it beyond just this beautiful tribute album?
even when I played in a band called Parachute, basically up until 2019. So, and that's how Courtney and I met, like Luke, my friend, worked for us and he was
Okay.
our tour manager and she would come to shows to hang out. And that's really where I got to know her was through my music stuff. And she was a fan of the band. And actually she reminded me the first time we didn't meet was that day. The first time we met was when she messaged me on Facebook because she had found our band in college and kindly had listened and was complimenting us and I blew her off and was such an idiot and I was just look she had a printout of that and she held it over my head for the rest of my days. I'm
Well,
sure
she
I'll
needed
her
that. That's only
yeah,
fair, to be
exactly.
honest.
But it was really, you know, when you meet somebody as talented and smart as Courtney, I think two things. One, you want to, and you have a crush on her, you want to impress her,
Yep.
So
Yep.
that automatically elevates it. But also, even just reading her poems back then when I was in the band and seeing how she viewed certain things, she called it getting into it, where it was like she came at it at such a different angle than most normal people would look at something. She could look at a vase of flowers or like a pair of sunglasses, things I'm looking at now. But she would have such an interesting way to approach that sonically, vocabulary wise, the way she structured stuff. It was just such a different way to observe the world that it really was like forced me to sort of rethink how I look at things and try. And I don't put myself on her level at all, but it is like, what is my viewpoint here?
Mhm.
Because she was just so good at thinking of interesting ways to come at something and to describe something and to use metaphor and similar all that stuff was very much in her wheelhouse. But she was just, yeah. So as living together, getting to read her poems before anybody else, her asking me advice on stuff, it literally made my brain, I think, rewire itself in different ways because she was so unique in how she viewed the world that it forced me to kind of meet her in the middle in a way that I don't think I ever would have done without her.
Mhm.
And not to say I got better at songwriting or anything, but I do think it really, even just like talking with her, you find yourself using bigger words. I mean that like
Yeah.
I remember when I first started dating Courtney, I thought to myself at one point I was like, I know a lot more words than I think I did. Like I'm using things that I never would have used in real life because I'm talking to this brilliant person who didn't use them pretentiously or whatever, but I just remember being like, this is wow, okay, like I have more of a vocabulary than like being proud of myself that I was able to like come up with these things and it was just that for 10 years with Courtney because she was so and that's what she did with her students too. She was just so good at pushing you in ways that you didn't even know you were getting pushed.
She challenged you
A challenge is the word for it. Yes, exactly. And she didn't even mean to. She just did. Just by being
naturally.
around her, you were
Yeah.
challenged.
She sounds like the kind of person who I learned from when, as a young painter, trying to figure out grayer tones in a painting doesn't mean I use the color gray itself. It means I'm mixing paints and looking for
Exactly.
shadow and not
Yeah.
just, which is a hard skill. I think that ability to be very, if I can say, deconstructing of the reality around us to really become curious about it. It's such an interesting way
That's a
that
great way to put it. Yeah. And that's
artists
exactly
really
what it
give us
was.
permission to do that. It's so necessary. I was thinking about as I was listening to your album, it's very much like a musical eulogy almost,
Yeah,
just
that's exactly how I describe it.
an honor to listen to it. And I'm curious, was that the intention going in, or did it kind of naturally emerge that way as you were doing your
Yeah, I
own
didn't.
healing work?
That's a great question. You know, I won't say I went into it with any sort of intention. For the longest amount of time that I haven't written a song is that time after Courtney passed, probably 6 months or
Yep.
so, where all I did was play golf because that was where my brain could just shut off, which
Yep.
was great. It was like my escape, and then walk my dogs and go sit at a coffee shop and read or whatever. I was just trying to do anything to fill my days. I watched a lot of sports. It was just things that I was living alone for the first time ever in my life. So it was really just
Wow.
a different world for me.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the first song just popped in my head one day, and I knew in that like I knew right then I had this feeling. I was like, all right, there's a year of my life. Like it's coming. Like this is it. You can kind of tell. I don't know if you feel this way, but when I'm getting I can just feel stuff starting to come, and you can kind of feel like something's about to happen.
Yeah.
That one, I didn't feel like, oh, there's gonna be some songs coming soon, or oh, like I'm about to go into writing mode. It just happened. And as my therapist likes to say, like it's my brain switching off of safety mode, and it's like
Yeah.
we can now think about this
Yeah.
and really delve in. So when I was writing the songs, it just was me wrestling with what I was feeling in the moment. The songs were coming without me really thinking about them. There was no, like, I need to write a song about Courtney today. It just would happen. And I realized as I was fleshing them out, especially lyrically, that it really was just me. That's how I was processing it. That I was trying to figure out, give my thoughts some scaffolding to be able to sort of keep the structure upheld. And for me as a songwriter, it was a very strange thing because usually I go into a song and I have a pretty good idea of like, oh, I want to write a song about this very specific thing. And then I figure out how to go about it. But with that, it was just sort of things would spill out. It was like, I guess that's what I need to think about right now. And it was like my brain being like, okay, we did this, now we can do this. Okay, we did this, now we can do this. And it really did. Midway through the process, I think, is when I realized what you said, which is that, oh, this is my eulogy to Courtney in a lot of ways. Like, I want this to be sonically and lyrically my tribute to her and my way of remembering her. So I can have it for posterity, I think. And it also, I think, was just so I could process things. And, after the album was finished, and especially after it came out, it really did feel like I was stepping into whatever the next process of my grief was in my life, and how do I move on now? Not from Courtney at all. I'll never move on from Courtney, but just sort of like take the next step in my life, career wise and creatively, and just it kind of forced me to figure out in a way like what's going to come next. And I think during the process, though, I didn't view it as that. It wasn't like, oh, this is my portal to the next part of my life. It was very much just you're just kind of in the flow state. I was here by myself. I didn't really see too many people during that time. I call it hermit mode, but I was really in my routine, and it's kind of like your brain just kind of snaps into that mode and just stayed there.
Yeah, the nature of not being able to do much beyond the basic brain doesn't have to be engaged, go through the motions kind of stuff is so typical. And I love the visual of your brain switching back into you have enough safety that you can go toward the unsafe and the uncertain right now
Yeah.
in a way that feels familiar and comforting. And I'm curious, did that process for you have a different kind of pressure than it has in the past? I
Mm.
know that creating music can be very much a difficult, painful process. And so I can only imagine the added layer of writing while you are grieving and recognizing, oh, my love is here with me in this. And that's
Hmm.
a very
Yeah,
big piece.
it definitely was. I wouldn't say pressure in the sense of because again, I didn't have any plan for it. I didn't have any managers at that point. I had an agent, but he was just sort of like understanding that probably nothing was coming anytime soon. My lawyer, who I've had since I was like 17, was kind of in the same boat. Just my whole team, quote unquote, was very like I think kind of I don't even know if they ever thought I'd make music again, which I didn't know at that point if I would or not. So I wouldn't say there was pressure because I also didn't necessarily know if it was ever going to come out. I didn't necessarily know if anybody else was ever going to hear these songs. I didn't know what I wanted to do with them. It wasn't like I had this grand scheme at first, but the pressure I did feel was wanting to make Courtney proud. I think that was the most self pressure I put on myself.
Yeah.
And it felt like I truly could have cared less what anybody else thought. And I still don't. It's amazing. People will leave comments like, oh, this should have been, I'm just like, I don't care, dude. And but the thing that I really did care about was just for some reason thinking like I want Courtney to be proud of it. I want to make an album that Courtney would love.
Hmm.
And that was my North Star throughout the whole production, especially on the production side. How do I make an album? That's why it's a little all over the place because Courtney was kind of all over the place. And it's not just like all sad acoustic songs, and it's not she loved pop music. She loved acoustic songs. She loved sad songs. She loved old big band songs. So for me, there's a wide variety of stuff on there because I was thinking, what would Courtney like, and kind of figuring out what were her tastes and what were her musical influences. And that's really what I had the most pressure with in my head because nobody was looking over my shoulder. There was no label. There was no manager being like, where is this album? We got to turn it in. Let's go. Again, I had no plan for it. I was, I'm in my late 30s. Like it's not like I'm this some spring chicken who's got to put. I had nothing going for me at that point, and nothing. I had social media stuff, which was great, and that was my job, and that was paying the bills, and I was able to keep doing that because it's pretty like structured and easy to do. But it was creatively speaking the least amount of pressure, but also definitely pressure on myself that I just wanted to make Courtney, proud and make an album she would be happy and excited to listen to.
Well, and that opens up so much opportunity to be authentic and very vulnerable too, I think, which I can hear a
Yeah.
lot through it. I actually have a question about one of the songs that you recently on social media named as your least favorite lyrics you've ever written. And I was
Oh
listening
yeah,
to,
yeah.
so I went and I was listening to Postcards, and it's just hauntingly beautiful. And I can
Oh, thank you.
completely understand why you would be like, I never wanted to ever write these lyrics. How dare I? But
Yeah.
you've even got, the little bit at the end of crazy in there. And it just tell me about why that song exists the way that it does and your
Yeah.
reason behind least favorite.
Yeah, I think least favorite because it was the hardest one for me to grasp and wrestle
Mm.
with because it's about moving on to kind of the next phase of life. And for me, that really came at first because I met somebody who, I fell in love with and we were and you feel that feeling of guilt and you're like, how do I even address this? Like what do I do here? And luckily they had done a lot of work themselves and were so kind and patient with me about it all. But that song was again just another song in the process later on that was just kind of like what do I need to think about right now and what do I really need to wrestle with? Why am I feeling these guilty feelings? What do I really want to say? And it's like, man, I just wish I could talk to Courtney. Like that would be the kind of thing I would do in that situation is talk to her. And it was a really weird feeling where you're like, I want to talk to her about the person I'm dating, the first person I'm dating after her. And it was, the relationship didn't work out, but I'm very thankful for it because I think it forced me to reckon with those feelings of guilt and being left behind and trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces of my life and move forward. And without her being a physical presence in that is a really tough thing to wrap my head around, even now, even still. And that song, yeah, that song, Postcards, and the idea being like, I guess I'll just send one-sided kind of misses up to you. Like I'll talk to you, but I'm not going to be able to hear back. And that's kind of where the poetry comes in too, to bring it back to that is a lot. I've just in reading her poetry and being around it, there's so much in there that I hear her telling me,
Mhm.
and I think anybody who reads it can feel that way too. But it was really helpful. And that song also was helpful to kind of express what I was thinking. And then as time has gone by, you can kind of get little bits and pieces of it in her poems because she thought about things that I didn't even realize she thought about until I found these poems and I'm reading them. It's like, man, her inner life was so rich and full and beyond what anybody, even me, who got to live with her and be married to her, it's just like she was so thoughtful about things and so yeah, that song was definitely came very quickly, but I think it was just again pouring out of this feeling of how do I justify moving on even though you're not moving on, it's like how do I justify letting my life take its next step? Do I need to be held back? Do I need to force myself to grieve, mourn her more before I step into the next relationship, anything like that? But luckily, it was a relationship that felt really natural. It happened very it was very lucky to get a chance to meet somebody like that in the circumstances that I did. And so I'm really thankful for it. And it's just been, it was a big like I think like you said, one of those linchpins where I have to address this.
Yeah. It reminds me, and when I was listening to it, I was thinking in the lens of this poetry book as well, the integration that is available to you, both through writing and creating the music, but also through collaborating and building the poetry collection and having the ability to go back and read and to hear her voice and to hear pieces that you're just discovering for the first time in that work. It's allowing you and everyone who encounters it permission to integrate and to practice what active grieving looks like as we
Mm.
continue day to day, not trying to rush forward, not trying to move on, because that's such a misnomer, but
Yeah,
trying to
yeah, yeah.
carry forward with us and
That's a great way
expand
to put it.
around our losses so that we don't feel so overcome by them and so limited from the life experiences because the grief is loud,
Mm.
right? It's a practice of continually learning to integrate more and more what we're learning and what we love and bringing it with us. And so I think that that's what's really beautiful that you've offered to people through collecting her work together. I mean, I even just listening to you and reading these poems, it's the first I've heard of her. And yet
Mm.
I feel like I know her. I feel like we would have been good friends. And now I'm sad
Oh,
that
for sure. No
that
doubt.
person is not available to me beyond this. And that, that kind of legacy and that impact is something you really want your audience to carry when they read your work or listen to your music.
And I think, one of the things I've been dealing with really recently is the realization that the pictures and the videos I have, that's it. There's no more coming. And I
Yeah.
keep thinking I'm going to stumble on a hard drive that has a million pictures that I forgot about or something. But it's like, no, like they're there. That's it. This is all you got. And the one place I always can find more of Courtney is in her poetry,
Yeah.
and that's so lucky and a privilege to get to have because a lot of people don't get that. But with her work, she really, that's her. That's herself, her inner thoughts, her inner life, how she viewed the world, like her story. It's all in there. And I always say, like, especially the live book readings we did and the book tour, like I was like, my goal in this is for you to get to know Courtney a little better. Like I want you to walk out of here knowing her a little better and understanding the magic of her that everybody who knew her understood. And this book really is where there's always stuff you can find of Courtney in there, and I can always return to it, which is again a selfish reason why I wanted to publish this book is to have that there and to let other people in on that too, because she was such a great, unbelievable friend and human being and just an amazing person to be around.
Well, and I think that that's what's beautiful. In grief work, I tell people constantly be selfish. Often
Yeah.
you are selfless. Go be selfish. Go demand what you need, demand that those needs are met, do whatever it takes, even if it makes people uncomfortable. And I think
And
it's
that's
not,
hard for me. Like I'm very codependent. I'm a very much a people pleaser, So advocating for myself and saying like, what do I need in this situation? That's really hard. Something I'd say one of the biggest things I've had to learn in the past, 3 years since Courtney passed in my grief. Like that is it. It has made me confront that to the
yeah.
fullest.
Well, and to have this beautiful gift that you offered the world as well is also yes, it's a gift you can go back to, but it's a gift in moments like this where you get to introduce Courtney to someone new and realize I get to have a whole conversation about the love of my life. This is going to be great.
My
And
favorite thing, yeah. And
yeah,
even somebody who comes over to my house, like I'll have friends or people I don't know come write. I'm like, here's a book, like please read this. And
this and no.
it's a really great, again, a privilege to get a chance to have that.
Okay, so what's the one thing, if there's one thing you want people to remember about Courtney or to learn about Courtney, maybe a core message of the album and the book, what would you leave us with?
I think for Courtney, in her writing and in her life, and the title of my album goes back to this because it's a line from a poem she wrote about this little splinter she got in Nashville, and she turned it into the first love poem she ever wrote, and she gave it to me, and it's about us, and it was the best gift I've ever received. But the reason I titled my album that is because it is exactly who she was. She was not, you know, some when you walked into a room, she wasn't somebody who like was just big and boisterous, but the room gravitated towards her. and you didn't necessarily know why, but this person was magnetic and she was so like kind and fun to talk to and can make you feel like you were the only person in a 100-mile radius. And this line says, how little love is, how worth everything. And I think what Courtney really projected in her writing and in her life too was she knew that's all that mattered. And if she could make you feel loved as a writer, as a person, as a student, as a husband, as a friend, she knew like that was her superpower, was to make you feel that in that moment. And so the line being, how little love is, how worth everything, her poetry was that too. She could find these little things and show how even the smallest little bit meant so much to so many different people and affected, the world around her. So it really, I think that line always stuck with me, and it really was her. That was her superpower, was making everybody who she came across with feel a little loved in that moment.
Wow. Will, I will make sure there are links to Courtney's book and to your music, of course, in the show notes. But if there's anywhere people can get in touch with you or just come along to follow and hear more, where can
Do
they
you?
reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So all my stuff is Will Anderson Music, and then I have Instagram page, which is like music history stuff, which is Willie J1234.
Cool.
You've probably seen my face somewhere or another on your feed, looking dumb. But we have TikTok and Instagram pages for Courtney's poetry. It's poem.wave. So poem.wav. And it's just, our my and on Tumblr as well. So I generally just post every day on there and post her poems. And it's been a nice way to, again, reach new people and see them go viral. And it's fun to see people connect.
I love it. Thank you so, so much for sharing Courtney with me today. This has been
Thank
such
you. This was a lot of fun.
good. Thank you for listening to episode 227 of Restorative Grief. Talking with Will today is a beautiful reminder that grief is not a single moment, but a lifelong conversation with the people we love and the life they leave behind. Through Courtney's poetry and Will's music, we get to witness love enduring, creativity transforming, and memory becoming art. What Will has built, this poetry collection and a musical album, is a living testament to a shared life and shows us that even in loss, there is a way to carry someone's light forward, to honor them fully, and to continue creating in their spirit. If this is the first time you've listened to the podcast, I'm so grateful you're here, and I hope this episode inspired you not only to get yourself a copy of the album and the book of poetry, but to recognize the beauty in the life around you and the relationships you share. This is a great reminder to take time and make time to converse with one another and to share conversations about what matters the most. If you have not done so yet, I do hope you'll subscribe to the podcast, leave a 5-star review, and if you're interested in bonus episodes or workbooks to go along with each of these, please become a patron of the show. For as little as $2 a month, you can gain access to all the bonus content, and you can sleep well knowing you are helping bring grief literacy to people in communities just like yours. As always, thank you to the patrons, former and present and future, for supporting the work. And again, before I go, I have one last thing to say. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.